Lilo and Stitch is the newest live-action adaptation. This time, it recounts the tale of young Lilo, a girl from Hawaii who has just lost her parents and yearns for a best friend, making a wish upon a star and receiving it in the form of an alien named Stitch. And that's all the spoilers I'll share, folks. This will be a spoiler-free review. You all know the story of Lilo and Stitch. It's a fantastic animated film, right? I believe many of us, particularly those in my age group, grew up with Lilo and Stitch. Not only was that animated film incredible, but we also had one of the best animated TV show spin-offs. I spent countless hours watching that show where Stitch was busy rounding up all the other little experiments and finding them homes. And don't even get me started on the endless array of Stitch merchandise that seems to be everywhere. The guy had like 30 Funko Pops all to himself, one of the reasons I had to stop collecting. I mention all this because I always found it puzzling when it was announced that we would be getting a live-action Lilo and Stitch movie. That's Disney for you? They love producing live-action films, but the fact that it was initially slated for a direct-to-streaming release? That's when I thought, Disney, you are underestimating this film. You are underestimating how much people adore and would definitely pay to see a live-action version of this. And I'm being proven right, as the tracking for this is so promising that when all is said and done, Lilo and Stitch could potentially become a billion-dollar film at the box office. That would just be another instance of Disney nearly letting $1 billion slip through their fingers because they believed it should go straight to streaming. Initially, I began to feel a bit anxious because much of the movie's marketing struck me as peculiar. The film is called Lilo and Stitch, yet all we were seeing was Stitch. Moreover, the promotions featured Stitch in brief snippets, hardly showcasing the actual movie. That's when the reality hit me. Despite finally receiving a theatrical release, it had been intended for streaming all along, and its budget was only $100 million. While that is still a significant sum, it's relatively modest compared to other Disney live-action remakes. For instance, Snow White was produced for $209 million. The Little Mermaid for $240 million, and Beauty and the Beast for $225 million. A budget of $100 million for Stitch is considerably less than what most of these remakes typically receive. Upon rewatching the full trailer, it became evident that there were indeed cuts made. Certain elements from the original story were omitted. I started to worry that I might be setting myself up for disappointment with this one, so I approached it with low expectations. I'm not someone who adores every Disney live-action remake, and yet this might be one of the best they've produced. Now let me clarify, Lilo and Stitch isn't flawless, and there are a few strange decisions that hinder it. However, when everything is taken into account, the most crucial achievement of this live-action remake is that it doesn't merely replicate many of the iconic scenes. It certainly includes those moments, but it accomplishes something that many live-action remakes fail to achieve. It captures the magic and heart of the original. Kudos to the director, Dean Fleischerkamp, for his work on this film. It's clear that his focus was evident throughout. Although Disney placed him in a challenging position and restricted many of his creative ideas, such as dressing Pleakley in a dress, or including Gontu, who is notably absent from this film, I assume these limitations stemmed from the reduced budget he was allocated. Despite these constraints, he's successfully crafted a Lilo and Stitch movie that will resonate emotionally with viewers. Another significant factor that makes this film memorable is Lilo herself. It's unfortunate that she wasn't featured prominently in the movie's marketing. I understand that Stitch, the beloved CGI character, takes center stage. However, the film is named Lilo and Stitch for a reason, and I must say, they cast the perfect actress for Lilo. Maya Kuya, who plays Lilo in this film, is simply delightful. You'll find yourself watching her with a smile, laughing along as this young girl showcases impressive comedic timing. Her performance alongside Stitch is a key element that draws you back into the narrative, allowing you to experience the magic and affection you felt for the original film once more. This sentiment also applies to Sydney Agudong, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who portrays Nani, Lilo's older sister. The film has removed several crucial aspects from the original Lilo and Stitch, introducing many new elements that differentiate it from the first movie, which I believe enhances its appeal and allows it to stand out. I don't think any of these alterations, except for one, surpass the original. However, they certainly distinguish this film. And as a viewer, you'll notice those fresh scenes, thinking, oh, that wasn't in the original. Oh, I don't recall that scene. I believe the most unexpected addition was the neighbor character. This is a completely new original character that was not present in the animated Lilo and Stitch film at all. Throughout the movie, I found myself questioning the purpose of this character. Why did they decide to include this? Indeed, they didn't just introduce an original character for no reason, a random neighbor. By the end of the story, they serve a significant purpose. And you know what? I didn't dislike it. I was certainly confused during the film, wondering, why are we including this person? But by the conclusion, I thought, you know what? Sure, I appreciate that. Why not conclude the movie this way? A major factor that enhances this film is Chris Sanders returning as the voice of Stitch. Naturally, aside from Lilo, Stitch is the character you will adore the most. His portrayal is spot on. They give him genuine range. There's no noticeable difference between his character in the cartoon and in the live-action version. I even find myself speculating that once Disney made the choice to release Lilo and Stitch in theaters, they might have gone back to add some extra scenes featuring Stitch creating chaos. There are moments in the film where it's evident Stitch is up to antics, like ruining a wedding, which weren't part of the original. It feels like a random side event we're witnessing. However, I think it was simply added to enhance the movie, providing more than you anticipate, perhaps because Stitch had enough moments in the streaming version. You get a lot of Stitch engaging in fun activities, and the CGI for him is outstanding. I believe the CGI for most characters turned out really well, regardless of whether you like some of the designs or appearances, such as Pleakley. I found him to be a bit too slimy in appearance, but he remains recognizable as the character that was adapted. Similar to the original animated film, this movie effectively allows Hawaii to shine as a character in its own right, showcasing tourist attractions, the local love for Elvis music, and some of the memorable songs from the original. I appreciate that they maintained this aspect of Lilo and Stitch. Hawaii significantly influences the overall narrative. Consequently, these elements will likely position Lilo and Stitch among the top live-action remakes. Children are definitely going to enjoy it, and fans of the original will likely be pleased as well. Interestingly, even if we label it the best live-action Disney remake, I believe there are still areas that need improvement. Let me discuss some aspects that I felt limited the film. Firstly, the constraints imposed on this movie, as it was initially intended for streaming, prevented it from reaching its full potential. Perhaps this limitation turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as it encouraged the director to focus more on the emotional depth and character development, rather than relying on extravagant visual effects. However, I think this approach negatively impacted two characters I was particularly excited about, Jumba and Pleakley. I can give Pleakley a slight pass, as I believe Billy Magnus, who plays Pleakley, is making a commendable effort to capture Kevin McDonald's unique mannerisms and high-pitched voice. But Jumba, portrayed by Zach Galifianakis, is a significant miscasting. Maybe it's my deep affection for the original Lilo and Stitch and the countless times I heard Jumba's voice during my childhood, but hearing Zach Galifianakis voice Jumba feels completely off. It just doesn't fit, and that voice shouldn't belong to that character. While I usually find Zach Galifianakis amusing, he was not funny in this film. He was unbearable. Honestly, I think the other major downside is the absence of Gantu, who served as the clear antagonist in the first film. Consequently, someone has to take on the villain role in Lilo and Stitch, which ultimately falls to Jumba. This makes sense to some extent, as he is the evil scientist responsible for creating Stitch and is determined to recapture him. If you've kept up with the Stitch movie and the animated series, you know that Jumba experiences a sort of redemption arc. There might be potential for that if they choose to create a sequel. However, Jumba remains the villain, and I find it somewhat anticlimactic and underwhelming. As a result, the stakes in Lilo and Stitch don't seem as significant or impactful as they did in the original. On that note, for those who dislike changes and were hoping for a faithful live-action remake of the original, many elements are indeed missing here. While I believe they offer an intriguing conclusion, I've seen some viewers express dissatisfaction with how this version wraps up. So this film isn't flawless, and as I mentioned, it's constrained by Disney's decision to allocate a lower budget, assuming it would go directly to streaming. Considering all this, part of me wishes they would attempt to create another installment, this time with the goal of a theatrical release and a larger budget. Primarily because I think a sequel could introduce Gantu and feature all of Stitch's cousins and experiments from the original animated series. That seems like an easy way to generate revenue, but knowing Disney, they likely won't pursue it. To me, this film is satisfactory. However, it's disappointing that satisfactory has become the benchmark for one of Disney's better live-action remakes. So, regarding Lilo and Stitch, I would rate it as follows. Action, 3.5 stars. Well, there's significantly less action compared to the original cartoon. Although there are still plenty of enjoyable sequences at the start and towards the end, it doesn't feel as climactic as the original. Comedy in the film, I would also give it 3.5 stars. Stitch is not only incredibly funny, but also charming, and Maya Kuya as Lilo is equally delightful. Drama in the movie, I would rate it 3.5 stars. This is where the film truly excelled. It focuses on its characters and ensures that Stitch can tug at your heartstrings at times. Horror in the film, I would assign it 1 star. This rating is primarily for the appearance of Jumba and Plekli. However, we anticipated that some live-action aliens wouldn't look fantastic. As for suspense in the movie, I would give it 2.5 stars. Due to some changes made and the removal of key characters, the stakes feel lower, resulting in less suspense about what might happen next. I believe the live-action Lilo and Stitch movie, despite its flaws, remains an enjoyable and fun experience that can be appreciated in theaters. Once again, this is just my perspective on the film, folks. I'm just relieved they didn't completely ruin or destroy another intellectual property. Here's to hoping Lilo and Stitch generates significant revenue, allowing for a second chance with a larger budget and much cooler elements to explore. Feel free to share your thoughts on Lilo and Stitch if you plan to watch it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, but as always, I'm Andrew. Take care.